All right, episode 1 of How to Eat Shit. So I was trying to work out like what do I do for the first episode? Do I do it on some crazy fitness tips? Do I do it on how to pull yourself out of the gutter? Do I do it on, how to manage your nutrition over a 24-hour training block? But I feel like it would be wrong to not kick it off with a story. So then I had, got thinking, I was like, well, which story? Like, do I talk about the car, pulling the car? Or do I talk about like the burpees? I don't know. But I think that the story I want to tell you to kind of kick off this first episode was the one where I rode from Adelaide to Melbourne. The reason I wanted to do this one was like this one out of all the ones that I've ever done, for some reason, just crushed me the most mentally. Like it just was done off a really stupid time frame. I put no time and energy into the thought process of how I was going to do it. It meant really not much to me. I feel like I was in a place where I didn't really have the same skill set I have now. So that's why I feel like it's the best story. But before I go into that story, I just want to kind of give you a bit of an idea on like what I'm going to be covering. So throughout all of these episodes, this is going to be my documented experience of things that I've learned pushing my limits. I hope that it gives you a sense of, I hope that these podcasts give you an idea of things that you can do to push your limits. And essentially this becomes the playbook and the guide so that you can continuously do hard things. So anyway, let's get into the story. So Adelaide, I was probably about 3-4 months after a previous challenge that I did. And I feel like that was at a point where I was like, I need to do something hard. I was starting to get stuck in a routine. So I was like, fuck it. We're going, I don't know why. I think I was riding about like once a week. So I was riding just like to and from work once a week. So I was like, well, let's do a ride. So for some crazy stupid idea, I thought to myself, I'm going to ride from estate to estate. I figured, 800 to 1,000 Ks, whatever it was, it is possible. So let's do it. So I decided on Adelaide, being that it was probably the shortest distance, or is the shortest distance. So I decided on Adelaide. I decided that I was going to fly to Adelaide, and then I was going to ride my bike from Adelaide to Melbourne. So keeping in mind here, like I've decided this, on like the 1st, and then I've got on a plane on like the 8th or 9th. So there wasn't a lot of time in between. There was sweet fuck all training, which is not a gloat at all. Please don't think that's a gloat. Anyway, so I decided, okay, what do I need to bring? What's the plan here? And this was my thought process. So I thought to myself, Ethan, you're gonna need camping gear because you're just gonna sleep on the side of the road, which I didn't. But that's what I thought. So I went out and dropped like $800 on just crazy ass camping gear, like expensive ass shit that was super, super light. And anything that's super, super light, just so you know, costs a lot of money, like a lot of money. So I bought all this camping gear, packed it in this bag that I bought as well. And I put in like a couple of gels, I put in a thing of salt tablets, and then some like bike gear, just like your normal stuff that you would assume you would want on an 800K ride, like a puncture kit. And that was about it. Literally that was about it. I had some like weird bag that I taped to my bike as well, like underneath the frame to hold some extra shit, which was like sunscreen and just, I can't even think of anything else, which unfortunately is not because there was more, but I think that was literally it. So I packed all my shit, put it in the bag, flew to Adelaide, got off the flight. And when I got off the flight, I called an Uber to this bike shop because I was like, oh, they'll help me put the bike back together. I got there and they're like, yeah, sorry, mate, we're booked out for the next week. So I didn't think ahead there. So I ended up trying to put the bike back together myself. And I am not a bike person at all. I YouTubed it, managed to kind of get it together. However, I punctured the tire because it was like a tubeless tire because I deflated them for the flight because I read somewhere you're supposed to do that. So the tire was now punctured. So I had to walk this bike like 3K on my back to this bike shop. So I walked it to this other bike shop who put the tire back together for me. and told them about what I was doing, and they managed to get me some other shit that I probably need, like, I don't know what it was, some weird liquid you put in the tires to make sure that they don't get punctures. Anyway, so I finally start getting on the road, and I'm riding this bike. I'm feeling great. At this point, I'm thinking to myself, fuck, you crazy man. Like, how cool are you riding from Adelaide to Melbourne? This is going to be all right, just leisurely ride. You'll be sweet. I wasn't. So I got out of this massive, big fuck off hill to leave Adelaide. Crushed me, and it was just so steep. Steepest hill I've ever climbed in my life. And then even coming down that, I was so bad at the bike that I actually physically could not, I had to sit on the brakes the whole time because I was so terrified of going that fast. But the first day kind of revealed to me just how hard this was going to be, because I think the first day alone, I hit like high 200s, like high 200 kilometers, which I was riding from early to really, really late. But I remember my first night, I thought to myself, I was like, I'm just going to get as much distance as I can. I'm just going to go as far as I can. And when I feel like it, I'm just going to pull up on the side of the road. That is just not how it works at all. You can't just pull up on the side of the road and just sleep wherever you want to sleep. That's not how that road works. And that road, there's a lot of things here, but that road from Adelaide to Melbourne is so thin, and there is nothing, no lights, just nothingness, straight abyss. And it was actually terrifying, because during the day it was okay, besides the fact that you have zero supplies and you're on your own supply system. So you're riding from servo to servo, getting restocking your supplies. And if you imagine if you imagine just driving from a state to another state, right? Like, most of the time you eat like shit. You go to Macca's, Hungry Jack's, Servo food. I literally did my 3 days of resupplies at Servo's because I was just up the guts. I didn't go through the ocean side. I went straight down the middle on the highway where all the trucks are. Anyway, so first day, right? I've knocked off like high 200s. I'm cooked at this point. I've got no change of clothes. The only thing I had, in my mind, because I don't think things through a lot of the time, which is a conversation for another day, I literally just packed like a cotton t-shirt, and I was like, I'll just change into that at night. And then I thought to myself on the first day when I was really struggling up that hill, fuck it, that t-shirt's just extra weight. So I threw it out. So I literally had Lycra shorts, Lycra top, and I wore that for 3 days straight. And that was probably the worst parts about the ride, just because of how disgusting I felt. But the first day I was riding, right? It started getting dark. I'm on this highway. It's pitch black, like pitch black. You look behind you, you could not see a single thing. You could not see a thing in front of you besides whatever your light was kind of showing. There's animals going on the road. Honestly, one of the most terrifying experiences. And then my lights died because I'd never used them before. It was the first time. So the lights died because they ran out of battery. I had no charger. How I charged my phone was on like a battery pack that I had. And I just figured I had 2 of them. They were going to last me the whole 3 days. But yeah, the lights died, and then I was in pitch black. So I was looking on my phone like, okay, where am I going to sleep? I can't sleep here. It's pitch black. Like, there's trucks going past. The trucks can't see me. Every time a truck would come, I would have to veer off into the side, set my bike up, wait for the truck to go past so that I don't get hit, and then go back on the road, ride for a little bit, see another truck, get back onto the side of the road. And that was just constant for about 25, 30K. Maybe even longer, actually, because it took me about 2-3 hours to find a motel. I then found this motel at a really late at night. Meanwhile, I've been riding from, early in the morning till, I don't even know when. Stayed in this like Wolf Creek lookalike motel. Meanwhile, I'm like pulling up all these truckies like having beers and stuff at 2 a.m. or whatever it was. And I'm in like double Lycra, looking like a fucking idiot. And yeah, then I slept there, woke up the next day. And this day 2 for me was actually really, really, really hard mentally. And day 2, I think, is one of the reasons I chose this story, because I haven't spoke about this story much, but it was the most crushing. So day 2, I woke up at this motel. I just started riding whatever, as you do, because I got no other choice, right? And I was just riding, and I did another really, really, really big day of riding. And I started having like my hands and my nerves in my hands were starting to go because the posture of myself just wasn't working on the bike. Stopped being able to feel my thumbs because of the pressure I was putting on my hands. My asshole was torn to shreds. And I cannot express to you how bad that was. It was just disgusting. But I think I was about halfway through the day. And I got to a town, and into the town, I just like kind of broke down because I realized how actually hard this was going to be and how miserable it was going to be. And I think miserable is the part that I didn't expect. I expected, in my mind, it was just a leisurely bike ride for 3 days. Just enjoy it. I took some time off work, just like let it happen, look at the scenery. There was no fucking scenery. There was just trucks and servo food for 3 days straight. But anyway, I pulled up at this train station and I was like, fuck it. I just broke down. I started like getting upset. I just started asking myself like, why am I even doing this? No one cares. I don't care. Why? It's not important to me. Like, who gives a shit? They're real dark thoughts. And that's what happens when you get to like, when you're taking on like a tremendous feat, right? There's a point, especially early on, where you're quite exhausted, and then you can't stop thinking about how much is actually left. And that's a really, really bad place to be in. And that's when thoughts start spiraling, and you can't let that happen. But I did let that happen. And that was a really big lesson for me. And I'll touch on that in other stuff of how I now kind of get past these things. But that's not for today. This is for the story. Anyway, so I'm in the train station and I'm waiting for the train. I'm waiting there for like an hour, and I'm burning daylight here as well. So I'm waiting here for an hour and then no train. So I've gone, fuck, the train must be closed. So I'm Googling it. Train's been closed for like years. So I'm on some dead train line. So I go, okay, there's a bus here. So I'm like sitting at this bus stop, and I've just gone, you know what? I give up. I just folded it in. I don't want to do this anymore. It's too hard. I started like welling up in my eyes. I was fucking crying. What am I talking about? I was crying and tremendously. And the bus, after like an hour, the bus comes past and it slows down. And then it just like went past me completely ignored me. Don't know why. Maybe because I was crying. But it left me. And the next bus wasn't for like 8 hours. So I literally had no choice, but I got back on the bike and I kept riding, and I would love to say things got better, which they maybe did mentally for a little bit, but they didn't. But that lesson was a really good one for me. And I still think about that all the time, because for me, when I look back on that now, I'm like, okay, you know, you need to have a strong why. You need to be really clear on what you're doing, and you need to have something to kind of lean towards when things get rough. I feel like I have that now and I've established that, but back then when I did that, I definitely didn't have it the same way. Anyway, so I'm riding. It's day 2, towards the end of the night. This time I was a little bit more prepared. I kind of timed when I needed to stop. But I think I was about like 7 or 8 hours into this ride, and I was on this really, really, really bad part of the road. Like, it was disgusting. There was dead animals. It stank. But then all of a sudden, it's like every single truck in the world, well, that's what it felt like, was going past me. And these trucks, man, they bloody hated me. And I don't know what it was. I don't know what I was doing wrong, but they fucking despised me. And I swear to God, they were targeting me. And I found out they were later, but I didn't know at the time. So I would just be riding, and they would purposely come up near me and just get as close as they possibly could to vortex me. And the wind tunnel would almost throw me off the road. And that was just constant. I'd have them spray window wipers at me. I couldn't believe it. Like, I was losing my mind. Like, I was giving them the finger, fucking screaming. I had nothing else to do as well. So anyway, these guys kept going for hours and hours and hours. And I was like, how are they all doing this? Why are they all doing this? And I found out I got pulled over by a highway patrol or a cop or whatever it was later that day. Pulled me over, sirens. Meanwhile, I felt like a badass when he goes, hey, Ethan, well, he didn't know my name, but he goes, what are you doing? And I said, I'm riding from Adelaide to Melbourne. And that felt cool to say. But he told me that all the truckers are fuming at me because they can't see me because I'm not wearing anything reflective. I was just wearing like a t-shirt and shorts or lycra or whatever it was. And he told me I need to go buy a vest and whatnot. But apparently he heard all the truckers on the radios going off their bloody head, just giving me shit. So they were all purposely doing it for hours. And that was very, very terrifying. Anyway, so I've got over this, real negative spot. But now I'm into day 3. And day 3 for me was like that really bad point of day 2, but for the whole day. I woke up, asshole was bleeding like all over me. Very disgusting. Very disgusting. But I woke up, my hands were cooked, my legs were cooked, my asshole was fried to death, and I had to get back on a bike. And that process of like putting all my gear on when I just had nothing left was traumatizing. It still makes me feel sick, even just picturing the t-shirt and the lycra, just putting that back on after it's been dripped in sweat for 2 days. Putting the shorts on after you can just, like, there's scabs and just no good stuff in there, right? Like, and you've got to put all of that same clothes back on again. Get on this bike, sit on this like seat that's like razor blades at this point for my ass. And then you know that you've got to bang out 360 Ks that day or whatever it was. It was a tremendously more, good on you, Ethan. It was a shitload more than I thought I would have left on that last day. Anyway, I got it done, almost. Something that actually, like, I didn't really post about it because, it's not really an awesome flex. But the truth is, I actually only made it I didn't actually get home. So the goal was to ride literally to home. I made it about 30, 40K short of home because the idea of trying to do that 40K, I could not do it. I was like a little baby. I was just like upset. My eyes were all welling up like all the time. I was just mentally broken. I would ride 10K and then pull over on the bike, stop, sit down, ride 10K and just keep doing it because my legs just had nothing left to give. And I think I was at the Grampians at the time when things started getting really, really bad. The Grampians is, those big hills in Melbourne. So I was going up and down these massive hills, having to constantly stand up on the bike, use my quads or what was left of them, and then sit back down on a raw asshole. Stand up, sit down. Every time I would sit down, I would scream. So it would be like, ah! It wasn't a manly scream, that's for sure. It was this big yelp every single time I'd sit down. And I made it to about Western Suburbs before I called for a lift. And I just said, come get me. I cannot do it anymore. Now, the reason I tell that story is not to say, it was cool to find some limits. I learned a lot about myself in that time because one, I had 3 days straight of just no stimulation at all. It was just me against me the whole 3 days. I was extremely underprepared, undertrained. I did not do worst case scenarios. I did not have the supplies. I did not train for it. And trying to tackle something like that without training was a lesson in resilience like I haven't experienced before. But from going to having my longest bike ride ever being not that long, actually, sorry, that's a lie. I did a 180K ride once, which was another problem and another story for another day. But to ride that to that extreme amount with such little preparation just crushed me. And for me, I feel like that was a pivotal moment for myself that made me realize it was just, wow, it's awesome. You can push your limits no matter what. But there's so much more to resilience and being able to eat shit than just being tough and then just trying to get over something. Like when you're in the shit, there's tactics and tips you can use. But how to eat shit and how to get over things is actually, it's a full circle of things that need to be taken into consideration. Like being resilient is about being prepared. It's about having supplies. It's about planning for the worst case scenarios. It's about having all of those other things. It's about having a massive foundation to lean upon. Knowing why you're out there is important. And that I had moments of things where I chased resilience prior to that. But that one for me was like, holy shit, there's so much to learn. And yeah, I feel like that's why I wanted to share that. So I hope you enjoyed the story about my arsehole. Episode 1.